Maya Chun adjusted her oversized glasses for the 100th time that morning as she walked through the gleaming lobby of Sterling Industries. Her plain black dress, bought from a discount store 3 years ago, felt even more inadequate surrounded by the marble columns and crystal chandeliers. She clutched her worn portfolio bag tighter, trying to ignore the whispered comments from the impeccably dressed women near the reception desk. "Did you see her shoes?" one of them murmured, not bothering to lower her voice. "I think those went out of style in the 90s. Maya's cheeks burned, but she kept walking. She had learned long ago that responding to such comments only made things worse. Her practical flat shoes might not be fashionable, but they were comfortable for her long commute on public transportation. Fashion was a luxury she simply couldn't afford. The receptionist, a stunning blonde with perfect makeup, looked up with barely concealed disdain. "Can I help you?" The tone suggested she'd rather be doing anything else. "I'm here for the junior accountant position interview," Maya said quietly, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Maya Chun, I have an appointment at 10 o'clock. The receptionist's perfectly manicured fingers clicked across her keyboard with unnecessary force. "Take the elevator to the 15th floor. Someone will meet you there." She didn't look up again, already dismissing Maya as unimportant. Maya had grown accustomed to such treatment. At 26, she had spent most of her life being overlooked or ridiculed for her appearance. Her straight black hair hung simply around her shoulders without any styling. She never wore makeup, partly because she didn't know how to apply it properly, but mostly because she couldn't justify spending money on cosmetics when she barely had enough for rent and groceries. Growing up in a small apartment with her elderly grandmother, Maya had learned early that appearances meant little when you were struggling to survive. Her grandmother, who had raised her after her parents died in a car accident when she was 8, had always emphasized education over everything else. "Beauty fades, Maya," her grandmother would say while helping her with homework at their tiny kitchen table. "But knowledge and kindness last forever." Maya had taken those words to heart, excelling in school despite having to work part-time jobs to help with expenses. She had earned her accounting degree through a combination of scholarships, student loans, and working nights at a local diner. Every penny had been carefully saved and spent, leaving no room for the clothes, makeup, or hairstyles that seemed so important to other girls her age. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt endless. Maya stared at her reflection in the polished metal doors, trying not to compare herself to the other passengers. A group of young professionals chatted about their weekend plans, their designer handbags, and perfect hair, making Maya feel invisible. She had always been the girl others looked through rather than at. In college, she had watched from the sidelines as her roommates got ready for dates and parties, spending hours on their appearance. They had occasionally offered to give her a makeover, but Maya always declined. She told herself it was because she had studying to do, but the truth was more complicated. She had built her identity around being the smart, practical one. Caring about her appearance felt like betraying the values her grandmother had instilled in her. The 15th floor buzzed with activity. Maya approached another reception desk, this one occupied by a woman who looked like she had stepped out of a fashion magazine. Her name tag read Jessica, and she examined Maya with the same critical eye as everyone else. "You're here for the accounting position?" Jessica's tone carried a note of surprise, as if she couldn't quite believe someone who looked like Maya would dare apply for a job at such a prestigious company. "Yes, I am." Maya straightened her shoulders, drawing on the inner strength that had carried her through years of similar encounters. Jessica led her down a hallway lined with glass offices. Through the transparent walls, Maya could see important-looking people in expensive suits conducting meetings and making deals that probably involved more money than she had ever seen. The clicking of Jessica's high heels on the marble floor seemed to announce to everyone they passed that someone who didn't belong was walking among them. They stopped outside a conference room where 5 people sat around a polished table. Maya recognized the setup immediately, a panel interview. Her stomach dropped. Panel interviews were always more challenging, especially when you already felt like an outsider. "The candidates are here for the junior accountant position," Jessica announced before disappearing back down the hallway. Maya entered the room and took the seat facing the panel. The 5 interviewers looked like they had been ordered from the same catalog, perfectly groomed, expensively dressed, and radiating the kind of confidence that money and privilege provided. She could feel their eyes assessing everything about her, from her simple dress to her lack of jewelry to her basic black flats. The lead interviewer, a middle-aged woman with silver hair pulled into an elegant chignon, spoke first. "I'm Margaret Walsh, Director of Human Resources. We've reviewed your resume, Miss Chun, and your academic credentials are impressive. However, at Sterling Industries, we believe that professional appearance is just as important as qualifications. Our employees represent the company's image." Maya felt her heart sink. She had expected this, but it still stung. "I understand the importance of professional appearance," she replied carefully. "I believe my work quality and dedication would be valuable assets to your team." One of the male interviewers, whose tie probably cost more than Maya's monthly grocery budget, leaned forward. "Miss Chun, Sterling Industries serves high-end clients who expect a certain level of sophistication from everyone they interact with. Do you feel you could meet those expectations?" The question was code, and Maya knew it. They were asking if she could transform herself into something she wasn't, if she could somehow become the kind of polished professional who would fit seamlessly into their world of luxury and status. Maya thought about her grandmother, who had cleaned office buildings at night to pay for Maya's school supplies. She thought about the countless hours she had spent studying while her classmates socialized, determined to create a better life through hard work and intelligence. She thought about all the times people had underestimated her because of how she looked, only to be surprised by her capabilities. "I believe that true sophistication comes from competence, integrity, and treating everyone with respect," Maya said, her voice growing stronger. "I may not look like your typical Sterling Industries employee, but I can promise you that my work ethic and attention to detail would exceed your expectations." The panel exchanged glances. Margaret Walsh made some notes on her pad, her expression unreadable. "We'll be in touch," she said dismissively. Maya knew that tone. It meant thanks, but no thanks, wrapped in corporate politeness. She gathered her portfolio and stood to leave, maintaining her dignity even as disappointment washed over her. As she walked back toward the elevators, Maya passed an office with its doors slightly ajar. Inside, she could hear raised voices, an argument of some kind. Through the gap, she caught a glimpse of a tall man in an expensive suit gesturing emphatically at someone she couldn't see. "I don't care what the board thinks," the man was saying, his voice carrying a tone of authority. "We're making decisions based on substance, not surface appearances. If we keep hiring people who look the part but can't do the job, we'll lose everything my father built." Maya paused for just a moment, struck by the irony. Here was someone arguing for exactly the principle she believed in, while she was being rejected for not looking the part. She shook her head and continued toward the elevator, figuring it was just another example of how differently things worked at the top versus where she lived. The elevator doors opened, and Maya stepped inside, pressing the button for the lobby. As the floors counted down, she reflected on the interview. She had known it was a long shot. Sterling Industries was one of the most prestigious companies in the city, and jobs there usually went to people with connections or Ivy League degrees. She had neither, just her state school education and determination to prove herself. Back in the lobby, Maya walked past the same group of women who had commented on her appearance earlier. This time, they barely glanced at her. She was already forgotten, just another unremarkable person who didn't belong in their world. Outside the building, Maya took a deep breath of the city air. The October wind was sharp, cutting through her thin jacket, but she welcomed the sensation. It reminded her that she was real, substantial, even if others couldn't see past her plain exterior. She pulled out her phone to check the time and saw 3 missed calls from her part-time job at the bookstore. Maya worked there evenings and weekends, shelving books and helping customers find what they needed. It wasn't glamorous work, but her boss, Mrs. Patterson, valued her reliability and knowledge of literature. At the bookstore, people judged her by her helpfulness, not her appearance. As Maya walked toward the bus stop, she passed a newsstand displaying the latest business magazines. Sterling Industries CEO was on the cover of one, Alexander Sterling, the 32-year-old heir who had taken over the company when his father passed away 2 years ago. He was handsome in the way that successful men often were, with dark hair and intense eyes that suggested intelligence and determination. Maya had read about him before, a Harvard MBA who had supposedly revolutionized his father's traditional investment firm by focusing on technology startups and sustainable businesses. The articles always mentioned his eligible bachelor status and the various socialites he dated, women who looked like they belonged on magazine covers themselves. She bought a city newspaper instead, scanning the help wanted section during the bus ride home. There weren't many options for someone with her qualifications and limitations. Most accounting firms wanted experience she didn't have, and the entry-level positions paid barely enough to cover her expenses. Maya's apartment was in a neighborhood that real estate agents politely called emerging. Her one-bedroom unit was small but clean, furnished with second-hand pieces she had carefully selected for functionality rather than style. The walls were lined with books, her one indulgence. She bought them used or borrowed them from the library, building a collection that reflected her wide-ranging interests in everything from classic literature to modern business theory. That evening, as Maya prepared dinner, a simple pasta dish that would provide several meals, she allowed herself a few moments of disappointment. She had really hoped the Sterling Industries position might be different, that maybe her qualifications would matter more than her appearance. But she had learned not to dwell on rejections. Tomorrow she would apply to more positions, continue her search for an opportunity to prove herself. Her phone rang as she was washing dishes. The number was unfamiliar, but Maya answered anyway. "Miss Chun? This is Margaret Walsh from Sterling Industries." The voice was crisp, professional. Maya's heart skipped. "Yes. We'd like to invite you back for a second interview tomorrow. Would 2 o'clock work for you?" Maya almost dropped the plate she was holding. Yes, that would be fine. May I ask what changed?" There was a pause. "Someone in senior management reviewed your file and was impressed by your academic record. We'd like to give you another opportunity to interview for the position." After hanging up, Maya stood in her small kitchen, trying to process what had just happened. Second interviews weren't common, especially after what had felt like a clear rejection. Someone in senior management had advocated for her. But who and why? She spent the evening researching Sterling Industries more thoroughly, reading every article she could find about the company's recent initiatives and financial performance. If she was getting a second chance, she was going to be as prepared as possible. Maya arrived at Sterling Industries 30 minutes early for her second interview, using the extra time to sit in a nearby coffee shop and review her notes one final time. She had chosen her navy blue dress, the most conservative option in her limited wardrobe, and had even attempted to style her hair differently, pulling it back into a neat bun. The result was still simple, but she felt it looked more professional. The same receptionist from the day before barely glanced up when Maya announced herself. "Mr. Sterling's office is on the 28th floor," she said, handing Maya a visitor badge. "Take the express elevator." Maya's heart stopped. "Mr. Sterling? I thought I was meeting with the HR panel again." Change of plans. The receptionist was already looking past her to the next person in line. The express elevator rose smoothly to the executive floors, and Maya felt her nerves multiply with each passing level. She had prepared to meet with the same panel to address their concerns about her appearance and prove her value through her knowledge and enthusiasm. She had not prepared to meet with the CEO of the entire company. Alexander Sterling's office occupied a corner of the 28th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city. The space was larger than Maya's entire apartment, furnished with modern pieces that probably cost more than she made in a year. Yet despite its obvious luxury, the office felt lived in rather than sterile. Books were stacked on the desk, papers were spread across a conference table, and a half-empty coffee cup sat beside a computer displaying what looked like complex financial projections. Maya was studying a wall of photographs showing various business achievements and charitable events when a voice behind her spoke. "Most people focus on the awards, but you're looking at the community service pictures."
Congratulations on the
She turned to
excellent work.
find Alexander
Thank
Sterling
you. I
watching her with
appreciate that.
curious eyes. He was taller than she had expected from his magazine photos, with dark hair that looked like he had been running his hands through it, and sleeves rolled up as if he had been working rather than posing. His tie was slightly loosened, giving him a more approachable appearance than the perfectly groomed executives she had met yesterday. The literacy program in the inner-city schools looked interesting, Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. Reading is fundamental to everything else. Alexander stepped closer, studying her face with an intensity that made Maya want to look away. But she held his gaze, reminding herself that she had nothing to hide or apologize for. "You're Maya-chun," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir. Please sit down." He gestured toward two leather chairs arranged near the windows. "Can I offer you some coffee? Water? Coffee would be nice. Thank you." Maya settled into the chair, which was more comfortable than anything she had ever sat in. Through the windows, she could see the entire city spread out below them, a view that reminded her how far she was from her usual world. Alexander poured coffee from an expensive-looking machine into two ceramic mugs. "Cream and sugar? Just black, please." Maya accepted the mug gratefully. The coffee was perfectly brewed, nothing like the bitter instant coffee she made at home. "I reviewed your file last night," Alexander said, settling into the chair across from her. "Your academic record is exceptional. Summa cum laude from State University, with additional coursework in business analytics and financial modeling. You also worked 20 hours a week throughout college." Maya nodded. "I needed to help support myself and my grandmother." "Tell me about her." The request surprised Maya. "My grandmother?" "Yes. She raised you after your parents passed away?" Maya wondered how much research he had done on her background. "She did. My grandmother came to this country with nothing but determination to build a better life. She worked multiple jobs to make sure I could focus on my education. She believed that knowledge was the only thing no one could take away from you." "Smart woman. What did she do for work?" "She cleaned offices at night, mostly. Sometimes she worked in restaurant kitchens during the day. Whatever was available." Maya felt no shame in her grandmother's honest work, but she wondered if Alexander Sterling could truly understand what that kind of life meant. "That's honest work," he said, surprising her with his sincerity. "My grandfather started this company with money he saved working in construction. He used to tell me that success built on other people's labor isn't really success at all." Maya studied his face, trying to determine if he was being genuine or simply saying what he thought she wanted to hear. His expression seemed honest, but successful men learn to be convincing. "Why did you ask me here today, Mr. Sterling?" "Yesterday's interview didn't go well." Alexander leaned back in his chair, a slight smile playing at his lips. "You're direct. I like that. And you're right. Yesterday's interview was a disaster. But not for the reasons you might think." "I don't understand." Margaret Walsh and her panel are excellent at identifying people who fit our current corporate image. Unfortunately, our current corporate image is part of the problem. Alexander stood and walked to his desk, retrieving a folder thick with documents. "Do you know what our client retention rate has been over the past 2 years?" Maya shook her head. 63%. We're losing nearly 4 out of every 10 clients. And do you know why?" He didn't wait for her to answer. "Because we've been hiring people who look perfect in meetings, but can't deliver results. We've prioritized appearance over competence, and it's killing us." He handed her the folder. Inside were performance reviews, client feedback forms, and financial projections that painted a troubling picture of declining quality and increasing dissatisfaction. "I've been trying to change our hiring practices for months," Alexander continued. "But I keep getting pushback from people who think maintaining our image is more important than maintaining our standards. Yesterday, I overheard part of your interview through my office wall." Maya remembered the argument she had heard through the partially open door. "That was you arguing about substance over surface appearances." "Exactly. When I saw how the panel treated you despite your obvious qualifications, I knew I had to intervene. So I'm offering you a different kind of opportunity." Maya set down her coffee cup, her full attention focused on his words. "What kind of opportunity?" "I want to hire you as my personal assistant and financial analyst. It's a newly created position that would report directly to me. You'd help me review investment proposals, analyze company performance, and assist with strategic planning. The salary is significantly higher than the junior accountant position, and you'd have access to executive-level training and mentorship." Maya felt her world tilt slightly. "Mr. Sterling, I appreciate the offer, but I have to ask, why me? You could hire someone with an MBA from Harvard or Wharton, someone with experience at major firms." "I could," he agreed. I have hired people like that. My last 3 assistants all had impressive degrees from prestigious schools. They also all prioritized networking over work quality, spent more time planning their social calendars than analyzing financial reports, and left for supposedly better positions the moment they found them. I'm tired of hiring resumes instead of people. He walked back to the window, looking out at the city below. Yesterday, after your interview, I called your references. Professor Martinez from State University told me you were the most dedicated student he'd taught in 20 years. Mrs. Patterson from the bookstore where you work said you've never missed a shift, even when you were sick, because you didn't want to let down your coworkers. That kind of character is worth more than a fancy degree. Maya felt tears threatening and blinked them back. This is very generous, Mr. Sterling. But I have to be honest with you about something. What's that? People are going to talk. Your employees, your clients, everyone. They're going to wonder why you hired someone who looks like me for such an important position. They'll assume it's charity or some kind of diversity initiative. That could reflect poorly on you. Alexander turned back to face her, his expression serious. Maya, can I call you Maya? When she nodded, he continued. Let me tell you something about being the CEO of a major company. People talk regardless of what you do. If I hire someone who looks the part, they say I'm superficial. If I hire someone who doesn't, they say I'm making a statement. The only opinion that really matters is whether you can do the job. And you think I can? I know you can. The question is whether you're willing to try. Maya looked around the luxurious office, then out at the city view that represented opportunities she had never dared to dream about. Everything in her practical nature told her to be cautious, to question why someone like Alexander Sterling would take such a risk on someone like her. But another part of her, the part that had driven her to work multiple jobs while maintaining perfect grades, whispered that this might be the chance she had worked so hard to earn. What would my responsibilities be, specifically, she asked. Alexander returned to his seat, leaning forward with obvious enthusiasm. You'd start by reviewing all our current investment portfolios. I want a fresh perspective on which companies we're supporting and why. You'd also help me analyze potential new investments, particularly in technology and sustainable business sectors. He pulled out another folder, this one containing what looked like business proposals and financial projections. We're considering a major investment in a renewable energy startup, but I'm not convinced the current analysis is thorough enough. I'd want you to do an independent evaluation. Maya opened the folder and scanned the first few pages. The numbers immediately caught her attention. There were inconsistencies in the revenue projections and some assumptions about market growth that seemed overly optimistic. These market penetration estimates look questionable, she said, pointing to a specific chart. The growth rate they're projecting would require capturing market share from established players without accounting for competitive response. Alexander smiled. That's exactly the kind of insight I need. My current team approved this proposal last week without raising those concerns. Have they considered the regulatory challenges for this type of energy infrastructure? The permitting process alone could add 18 months to their timeline, which would significantly impact their cash flow projections. They have not. Alexander was watching her with growing interest as she continued to identify problems with the analysis. Maya spent the next 20 minutes walking through the proposal, pointing out areas where the assumptions seemed unrealistic and suggesting additional research that should be conducted before making any investment decision. She found herself relaxing as she focused on the work, her natural analytical abilities taking over from her nervousness about the situation. This is impressive, Alexander said when she finished. You've identified issues that our entire investment team missed. I might be wrong, Maya said quickly. I'd want to do more research before making any final recommendations. That's exactly the right approach. Too many people around here are quick to give definitive answers without doing the work. Alexander stood up and extended his hand. Maya, I'd like to offer you the position. The starting salary is $90,000 annually, with performance bonuses and full benefits. What do you say? Maya stared at his outstretched hand, her mind racing. $90,000 was more than twice what she had ever earned in a year. It would mean she could move to a better apartment, help support her grandmother more comfortably, and, finally, have some financial security. But it also meant stepping into a world where she would be constantly scrutinized and questioned. I accept, she said, shaking his hand. When would you like me to start? Monday morning. We'll get you set up with an office, a computer, and access to all the systems you'll need. Margaret Walsh will handle the paperwork and orientation. As Maya prepared to leave, Alexander walked her to the door of his office. Maya, there's something else you should know. This position is going to challenge you in ways that have nothing to do with the work itself. Some people in this company won't be happy about my decision to hire you. They'll question your qualifications, your background, and your right to be here. I understand. Do you? Because I need to know that you're prepared for that kind of pressure. I believe in your abilities, but you're going to have to believe in them too, even when others don't. Maya thought about all the times she had been underestimated, all the challenges she had overcome to get to this point. Mr. Sterling, I've spent my entire life proving myself to people who didn't think I belonged. I'm not going to stop now. Good. Because I have a feeling you're going to surprise a lot of people around here. As Maya left Sterling Industries that afternoon, she felt like she was walking in a dream. In the span of 2 days, she had gone from being rejected for a junior position to being offered a senior role reporting directly to the CEO. It was the kind of opportunity that could change everything about her life. But as she rode the bus home, Maya also felt the weight of Maya's first morning at Sterling Industries began at 7:30, 90 minutes before most employees arrived. She had wanted extra time to settle into her new office and review the materials Alexander had given her without the distraction of curious coworkers. The security guard who led her into the building looked surprised to see someone dressed so simply arriving so early, but he checked her new employee badge and directed her to the 27th floor. Her office was smaller than Alexander's, but still impressive by any standard Maya had known. It had a window overlooking the city, a mahogany desk with a high-end computer system, and built-in bookshelves that she was already planning to fill with reference materials. A stack of folders waited on her desk, along with a welcome note from Alexander outlining her first week's priorities. Maya had just started reviewing the renewable energy investment proposal when she heard voices in the hallway. Through her open door, she could see a group of impeccably dressed women walking past, their conversation carrying clearly. I heard Sterling hired some nobody from nowhere for a senior position, one of them was saying. Apparently, she doesn't even have an MBA. Margaret Walsh is furious, another voice added. She had 3 qualified candidates lined up, and he completely bypassed the normal process. I'm sure it's just another one of his social justice phases, a third woman said dismissively. Remember when he hired that intern from the community college? This won't last any longer than that did. Maya felt her cheeks burn, but she forced herself to focus on the financial projections in front of her. She had expected this kind of talk, but hearing it was still painful. The community college intern they had mentioned with such disdain had probably worked twice as hard as anyone else just to get that opportunity. At 9 o'clock, Margaret Walsh appeared in Maya's doorway. The HR director's smile was perfectly professional and completely cold. Miss Chun, I wanted to personally welcome you to Sterling Industries and review some administrative matters with you. Thank you. That's very helpful. Margaret entered the office and closed the door behind her, a gesture that immediately put Maya on guard. I'm sure you understand that your hiring was quite unusual. Typically, senior positions go through a comprehensive review process involving multiple departments and background checks. Mr. Sterling mentioned that this was a newly created position. Yes, well, regardless of how the position came about, I want to make sure you understand the expectations for someone at your level. Margaret placed a thick manual on Maya's desk. This outlines our dress code, communication protocols, and professional standards. I've taken the liberty of highlighting the sections that might be particularly relevant for someone with your background. Maya opened the manual to one of the highlighted sections, which detailed appropriate business attire for client-facing positions. The description painted a picture of the perfectly groomed professional women she had encountered throughout the building. I appreciate the guidance, Maya said carefully. But I was under the impression that my role would be primarily analytical rather than client-facing. Margaret's smile grew even thinner. Miss Chun, everyone at Sterling Industries represents the company. Whether you're analyzing investments or attending internal meetings, our clients and partners expect a certain level of sophistication from our team. I'm sure you understand. After Margaret left, Maya sat staring at the highlighted manual pages. The message was clear. Change how you look or you won't belong here. She thought about her grandmother's words about substance mattering more than surface, but she also understood the reality of the corporate world she had entered. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. Alexander's voice came through clearly. Maya, could you join me in my office? I'd like to review your initial thoughts on the renewable energy proposal. Maya gathered her notes and headed upstairs, grateful for the chance to focus on actual work rather than office politics. Alexander's office felt like a refuge from the subtle hostility she had encountered elsewhere in the building. How's your first morning going? He asked, gesturing for her to take a seat at his conference table. Educational, Maya replied diplomatically. Alexander studied her expression. Let me guess. Margaret Walsh paid you a visit to discuss professional standards. How did you know? Because she does the same thing to anyone she perceives as not fitting her vision of Sterling Industries' perfection. Last year, she gave a similar lecture to our top-performing financial analyst because his ties weren't expensive enough for her taste. Did he stay with the company? He did, and he's now one of our most respected team leaders. The key is not to let other people's narrow definitions limit your own potential. Alexander spread the renewable energy files across the table. Now, what did you find? Maya spent the next hour walking through her analysis, pointing out the flawed assumptions and questionable projections she had identified. Alexander listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and taking detailed notes. This is exactly the kind of thorough analysis we need, he said when she finished. I'm going to ask you to present these findings to our investment committee next week. Maya felt a spike of anxiety. To the committee? Mr. Sterling, I've been here exactly 3 hours. Don't you think they might question my qualifications to make recommendations on a multi-million-dollar investment? They might, but that's their problem, not yours. Your analysis is solid, your reasoning is clear, and your conclusions are well supported. That's all that should matter. And if they disagree? Alexander leaned back in his chair, considering the question. Maya, can I tell you something about this company? For years, we've made decisions based on consensus rather than competence. We've avoided challenging established thinking because it might make people uncomfortable. That approach has cost us millions of dollars and dozens of clients. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. My father built this company by trusting his instincts and hiring people who could see what others missed. Somewhere along the way, we lost that willingness to take calculated risks. I'm trying to get it back. By hiring people like me? By hiring the right people, regardless of what they look like or where they went to school. He turned back to face her. Maya, I didn't hire you to be comfortable. I hired you to be exceptional. Are you willing to do that? Maya thought about her grandmother, who had taken enormous risks by leaving everything familiar behind to build a new life in a foreign country. She thought about all the challenges she had already overcome and all the people who had underestimated her along the way. Yes, I'm willing. Good. Because I have another assignment for you. Alexander handed her a new folder, thicker than the first. We're considering acquiring a small technology company that develops software for environmental monitoring. I want you to evaluate whether it would be a good addition to our portfolio. Maya opened the folder and scanned the first few pages. The company, called EcoTrack Solutions, had developed innovative software for monitoring air and water quality in real time. Their client list included several government agencies and environmental consulting firms. What's the timeline for this evaluation? Maya asked. 2 weeks. The founder is flying in from California next month to make a presentation to our board, and I want to have a complete analysis ready before then. Maya spent the rest of the morning diving into EcoTrack's financial statements and market research. The work was challenging and engaging, requiring her to research unfamiliar technologies and markets. She felt energized by the complexity of the task and the trust Alexander was placing in her abilities. At lunchtime, Maya decided to eat at her desk rather than venture into the company cafeteria, where she suspected her presence would generate more unwanted attention. She had packed a simple sandwich and an apple, the same lunch she had eaten while studying at the library during college. She was deep in thought about EcoTrack's competitive positioning when someone knocked on her door frame. A young man about her age stood in the doorway, holding a coffee cup and wearing a friendly smile. Hi, you must be Maya Chun. I'm David Kim from the Technology Investments team. He extended his hand. I wanted to introduce myself since we'll probably be working together on some projects. Maya shook his hand gratefully. It's nice to meet someone friendly around here. David laughed. Let me guess, you've encountered the Sterling Industries Welcome Committee? Don't take it personally. This place has a reputation for eating newcomers alive, especially ones who don't fit the traditional mold. How long have you worked here? 3 years. I started right after finishing my MBA at Northwestern. It took about 6 months before people stopped treating me like I was lost and looking for the mailroom. Because you're Asian? That, plus I grew up in a working-class family in Queens instead of the Upper East Side. Around here, your zip code matters almost as much as your degree. David sat down in the chair across from her desk. But here's the thing. Once you prove yourself, all that other stuff becomes background noise. And how do you prove yourself? By being so good at what you do that they can't ignore you. By delivering results that speak louder than gossip. He gestured toward the folders on her desk. I heard you're working on the renewable energy deal and the eco-track evaluation. Those are high-profile projects that a lot of people will be watching. No pressure, right? Maya said with a wry smile. Actually, it's better to have pressure than to have easy assignments. Easy assignments mean they don't think you can handle anything important. Difficult assignments mean they think you might be worth the risk. David's words stayed with Maya throughout the afternoon as she continued her research. By 5 o'clock, when most of the office began to empty out, she had made significant progress on both projects. She was starting to see patterns in EcoTrack's business model that both impressed and concerned her. Alexander stopped by her office at 6:30, looking surprised to find her still there. Working late on your first day? That's either dedication or masochism. Dedication, I hope. I'm finding some interesting things in the EcoTrack analysis. Such as, Maya pulled up a spreadsheet on her computer screen. They have impressive technology and strong client relationships, but their financial management is problematic. They're growing rapidly, but not profitably. Their cash flow is negative despite increasing revenues, which suggests they're spending faster than they're earning. Alexander studied the numbers over her shoulder. That's not necessarily uncommon for a growing tech company. True, but look at where they're spending their money. Maya highlighted several line items in the budget. They're investing heavily in executive compensation and office amenities while underinvesting in research and development. For a company that depends on technological innovation, that's a red flag. What would you recommend? I need to do more research, but my initial impression is that they might be a good technology acquisition, but a poor financial investment. If we bought them, we'd probably need to replace their management team and restructure their operations. Alexander smiled. That's exactly the kind of insight I was hoping for. Most people would have focused on their revenue growth and missed the underlying problems. Most people probably have more experience evaluating tech companies than I do. Experience isn't always an advantage. Sometimes fresh eyes see things that experienced eyes miss. Alexander gathered his jacket from the back of her chair. You should head home soon. Tomorrow we'll be starting your introduction to the other department heads. Maya felt a flicker of anxiety. More meetings where I don't belong? More opportunities to prove that you do belong. There's a difference. After Alexander left, Maya worked for another hour, wanting to make as much progress as possible while she had uninterrupted time to think. The building grew quiet around her, with only the cleaning crew and a few other late workers remaining. 2 weeks into her new position, Maya had established a routine that kept her focused on work while minimizing uncomfortable social interactions. She arrived early, stayed late, and spent her lunch breaks in her office rather than the executive dining room, where conversations stopped when she entered. The strategy was working professionally. Her analysis of both the renewable energy proposal and EcoTrack solutions had impressed Alexander and earned grudging respect from some of her colleagues. Personally, however, the isolation was beginning to wear on her. Maya was reviewing quarterly earnings reports when her phone rang with an internal call from Alexander's direct line. Maya, I need you to join me for a client meeting this afternoon. Can you be in conference room A at 3 o'clock? Of course. What's the meeting about? Harrison Global wants to discuss expanding their investment portfolio with us. They're particularly interested in sustainable technology companies, which makes your EcoTrack analysis very relevant. Maya felt her stomach drop. Mr. Sterling, I should mention that I've never participated in a client presentation before. That's fine. You'll primarily be there to answer technical questions about the investments we're recommending. Your expertise is exactly what this client needs to hear. After hanging up, Maya spent the next 2 hours preparing for the meeting, reviewing her notes, and practicing potential questions. She had learned that Harrison Global was one of Sterling Industries' largest clients, with an investment portfolio worth over $200 million. The pressure to perform well was enormous. At 10 minutes before 3, Maya gathered her materials and headed to conference room A. Through the glass walls, she could see Alexander setting up presentation materials while Margaret Walsh arranged refreshments on a side table. 2 men in expensive suits, presumably the Harrison Global representatives, were already seated at the polished conference table. Maya paused outside the door, suddenly, aware of how different she looked from everyone else who would be in that room. Her navy blazer was off the rack rather than tailored. Her shoes were practical rather than stylish, and her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail rather than professionally styled. For a moment, she considered suggesting that someone else handle the technical presentation. But then, she remembered Alexander's words about being exceptional rather than comfortable. She straightened her shoulders, checked that her portfolio was organized, and entered the room. "Gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Maya Chun, our senior financial analyst," Alexander said, standing as she approached the table. "Maya has been leading our evaluation of sustainable technology investments." The older of the 2 Harrison Global representatives, a silver-haired man with calculating eyes, looked Maya up and down with obvious skepticism. "Ms. Chun, I'm Robert Harrison, CEO of Harrison Global. This is my CFO, James Morrison. I have to admit, we were expecting someone with more seasoned experience for this type of analysis." The comment hung in the air like a challenge. Maya could feel Margaret Walsh watching her with barely concealed satisfaction, waiting to see how she would handle the subtle insult. "Mr. Harrison," Maya replied calmly, "I understand your concern about experience. However, I believe you'll find that my analysis of the sustainable technology sector is thorough and well-researched. The companies we're recommending offer significant growth potential with manageable risk profiles." "I see." Robert Harrison's tone suggested he remained unconvinced. "Well, let's hear what you have to say." Maya moved to the front of the room, connecting her laptop to the projection system. Her hands were steady despite her racing heart as she brought up her first slide, a comprehensive overview of the sustainable technology market. "The sustainable technology sector has grown by 37% annually over the past 5 years, she began, her voice gaining confidence as she focused on the data. "This growth is being driven by both regulatory changes and shifting consumer preferences toward environmentally responsible products." She clicked to the next slide, showing market projections and investment trends. However, not all companies in this sector represent good investment opportunities. Many are trading at valuations that don't reflect their actual earnings potential or market position. James Morrison leaned forward, his interest clearly piqued. "Can you give us some specific examples?" Maya had prepared for this question. "Certainly. We evaluated 43 companies in the renewable energy and environmental monitoring sectors. Of those, we identified 7 that meet our criteria for strong growth potential, solid management teams, and reasonable valuations." She spent the next 20 minutes walking through each recommended investment, explaining the technology, market opportunity, and financial projections for each company. Her analysis was detailed but accessible, demonstrating both technical expertise and practical business understanding. Robert Harrison interrupted during her discussion of EcoTrack Solutions. "Ms. Chun, your presentation suggests this company has strong technology but weak financial management. Why would we want to invest in a company that can't control its costs?" Maya had anticipated this question, but hearing it from such an influential client still made her pulse quicken. "Excellent point, Mr. Harrison. EcoTrack represents what I would call a strategic acquisition opportunity rather than a passive investment." She clicked to a slide showing her recommended restructuring plan. "The company's technology is genuinely innovative and has significant market potential. Their client base is growing rapidly, and they have several government contracts that provide stable revenue streams. However, Their current management team lacks the financial discipline necessary to scale the business profitably. So you're suggesting we help them replace their management? James Morrison asked. I'm suggesting that with proper financial oversight and strategic guidance, EcoTrack could become a dominant player in the environmental monitoring space. The technology is sound, the market need is real, and the valuation reflects their current problems rather than their potential value. Alexander smiled from his position at the back of the room, clearly pleased with how Maya was handling the challenging questions. Robert Harrison studied the financial projections on the screen. What kind of return are you projecting if we pursue this acquisition strategy? Maya clicked to her final slide, showing detailed financial models for each recommended investment. Based on conservative growth assumptions and accounting for implementation costs, we project a portfolio return of 22% annually over the next 5 years. The sustainable technology investments would comprise approximately 30% of that portfolio. The room fell silent as both Harrison Global representatives studied the numbers. Maya could feel sweat on her palms, but she kept her expression confident and professional. Finally, Robert Harrison looked up from his notes. Miss Chun, I have to admit, when I first saw you today, I had concerns about Sterling Industries' commitment to maintaining their standards. But this analysis is the most thorough and practical investment evaluation we've seen in months. Maya felt a wave of relief mixed with lingering resentment at his initial assumptions. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. I appreciate the opportunity to present our recommendations. James, what do you think? Robert Harrison turned to his CFO. I think we'd be foolish not to move forward with at least the first phase of these investments. The analysis is solid, the opportunities are compelling, and the projected returns are attractive. James Morrison closed his notebook and looked at Alexander. Mr. Sterling, we'd like to begin with a $50 million commitment to the portfolio MS. Chen has outlined. Alexander stepped forward to shake hands with both men. Excellent. Maya will work with our investment team to implement the initial phase over the next 6 weeks. After the Harrison Global representatives left, Margaret Walsh quickly gathered the presentation materials and departed without making eye contact with Maya. Alexander waited until they were alone before speaking. That was exceptional, Maya. You handled Harrison's skepticism perfectly, and your analysis clearly impressed them. Maya sank into one of the conference room chairs, finally, allowing herself to feel the exhaustion that came with sustained high-pressure performance. I thought for a moment that Mr. Harrison was going to ask for a different analyst. He might have, if your work hadn't been so obviously superior to what he was expecting. That's the beautiful thing about excellence. It's hard to argue with results. $50 million is a lot of responsibility. Alexander sat down across from her, his expression serious. Maya, I want you to understand something about what just happened in this room. Harrison Global has been our client for 8 years. They've seen presentations from some of the most experienced analysts in the city. The fact that they were willing to commit $50 million based on your recommendations says something important about your capabilities, or about their tolerance for risk. No, it says something about your talent. Robert Harrison didn't build a $200 million company by taking unnecessary risks. He committed that money because your analysis convinced him that the opportunities were real and the risks were manageable. Maya felt a growing sense of confidence mixed with apprehension. Success brought new expectations and greater visibility. What happens now? Now you prove that your analysis was correct. You'll work with our investment team to execute these acquisitions, starting with EcoTrack Solutions. You'll also need to prepare quarterly reports for Harrison Global showing the progress of their investments. That sounds like more responsibility than a senior analyst typically handles. Alexander smiled. It is. Consider it a promotion in everything but title. Your salary is being increased to $110,000, effective immediately. Maya stared at him in disbelief. A $20,000 raise after 2 weeks was unprecedented, especially for someone in her position. Mr. Sterling, are you sure about this? People are already talking about the special treatment you're giving me. This will only make it worse. Let them talk. The only special treatment I'm giving you is the opportunity to succeed or fail based on your own merits. Today you succeeded spectacularly. Over the following weeks, Maya threw herself into implementing the Harrison Global investment strategy. She worked closely with the legal team to structure the EcoTrack acquisition, collaborated with the due diligence specialists to verify her research, and coordinated with external advisors to ensure proper valuation and negotiation strategies. The work was challenging and occasionally overwhelming, but Maya found herself thriving under the pressure. Each successful milestone built her confidence and earned her additional respect from colleagues who had initially dismissed her. David Kim became an invaluable ally, helping her navigate office politics and introducing her to other professionals who shared their outsider perspective. Through him, Maya met Jennifer Torres, a Latino attorney who had joined Sterling Industries 6 months earlier, and Marcus Johnson, an African-American investment specialist who had been promoted from within after starting as an administrative assistant. The key to surviving here, Jennifer explained during one of their informal lunch meetings in Maya's office, is remembering that your work speaks louder than their assumptions. Every successful project you complete makes it harder for them to dismiss you. But it never stops completely, Marcus added. I've been here 4 years, and I still get comments about how articulate I am, as if that's surprising given my background. How do you handle it? Maya asked. By being so good at what I do that their opinions become irrelevant, he replied. And by building relationships with people who judge you by your results rather than your appearance. Maya was learning that Sterling Industries, like most large corporations, contained multiple cultures. There were the traditional power brokers who valued connections and appearance above all else. But there was also a growing group of professionals who had earned their positions through competence and hard work. Alexander Sterling, despite his privileged background, seemed to be deliberately shifting the company's culture toward merit-based evaluation. The shift was not without resistance. Maya occasionally heard whispered conversations about diversity hires and lowered standards. Some colleagues continued to treat her with polite condescension, as if she were a well-meaning experiment rather than a legitimate professional. But, increasingly, her expertise was being sought by people throughout the company. Her analysis of sustainable technology investments had become a model for how other sectors should be evaluated. Her recommendations were being implemented successfully, generating profits, and impressed clients. 1 month after the Harrison Global presentation, Maya received a call from Alexander's assistant asking her to attend a senior staff meeting the following morning. When she arrived at the executive conference room, she found herself surrounded by department heads and senior managers, the most senior level of Sterling Industries management below the executive team. Alexander called for attention and gestured toward Maya. I want to update everyone on the progress of our sustainable technology initiative. Maya has been leading this effort, and the results speak for themselves. He clicked through slides showing portfolio performance, client satisfaction metrics, and revenue growth. The sustainable technology investments were outperforming projections by 15%, with 2 of the recommended companies already showing strong quarterly results. Based on these successes, Alexander continued, I'm promoting Maya to Director of Strategic Investment Analysis, effective immediately. She'll be taking over all our alternative investment evaluations, and we'll have a team of 3 analysts reporting to her. The announcement created a ripple of surprise throughout the room. Director-level positions typically required years of experience and advanced degrees. Maya had achieved this level in less than 6 weeks. Margaret Walsh, who had been conspicuously silent during the presentation, finally spoke up. Mr. Sterling, while Ms. Chen's work has been satisfactory, don't you think such a rapid promotion might send the wrong message about our advancement criteria? Alexander's expression hardened slightly. Margaret, what message do you think it sends when we promote someone based on exceptional performance and measurable results? Because that seems like exactly the message we should be sending. I simply think that experience and credentials should factor into these decisions. They do factor in. Maya's credentials include a summa cum laude degree, successful management of a $50 million investment portfolio, and client satisfaction scores that exceed anyone in her peer group. Those seem like relevant credentials to me. The room fell silent. Maya could feel every eye on her, some supportive, others clearly skeptical. She understood that this moment would define her future at Sterling Industries. She could shrink from the attention or embrace the opportunity. Thank you for this promotion, Mr. Sterling, she said. her voice carrying more confidence than she felt. I look forward to building a team that continues to deliver exceptional results for our clients. As the meeting ended and people filed out of the conference room, Maya remained behind with Alexander. That was quite an announcement, she said. 6 months after her promotion to Director of Strategic Investment Analysis, Maya had transformed not only her own career, but also the culture of her department. Her team of 3 analysts, carefully selected based on talent rather than pedigree, had developed a reputation for thorough research and innovative investment strategies. The sustainable technology portfolio she had initiated was now worth over $200 million and had attracted 5 new major clients to Sterling Industries. Maya was reviewing quarterly performance reports when her assistant knocked on her door. "Miss Chun, Mr. Sterling would like to see you in his office when you have a moment." Maya gathered the reports she had been preparing for the next board meeting and headed upstairs. Alexander's office had become a familiar space where she felt comfortable discussing complex strategies and challenging decisions. Their working relationship had evolved into something approaching true partnership, built on mutual respect and shared commitment to excellence. "Maya, come in. I have some interesting news to share with you." Alexander was standing by his window, but his expression was more serious than usual. "Good news or challenging news?" Maya asked, settling into her usual chair. "Both, actually. I've been offered a position as CEO of Sterling Holdings, our parent company. It's a significant promotion that would involve overseeing 12 subsidiary companies across multiple industries." Maya felt a mixture of congratulation and concern. "That's wonderful, Alexander. You've certainly earned such a position. But what does it mean for Sterling Industries?" "That's where you come in." Alexander moved to his desk and picked up a thick document. "The board is considering several candidates to replace me as CEO here. However, I've made a recommendation that might surprise them." Maya felt her heart begin to race as she sensed where this conversation was heading. "Maya, I want to recommend you as my successor." The words seemed to hang in the air. Maya stared at Alexander, certain she had misheard him. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" "I want to recommend you as the next CEO of Sterling Industries. You have the strategic vision, the analytical skills, and the leadership abilities necessary to run this company." Maya stood up abruptly, needing to move as she processed what he was suggesting. "Alexander, I've been here 7 months. 7 months. CEOs of major companies don't come from junior analysts with no executive experience. They do if those analysts demonstrate exceptional judgment and produce extraordinary results. Maya, look at what you've accomplished in less than a year. You've generated over $50 million in new revenue, attracted major new clients, and built a team that consistently outperforms industry standards. That's very different from running an entire company." Alexander opened the document he had been holding, revealing detailed financial projections and strategic plans. "Actually, it's not. For the past 3 months, you've been effectively running the strategic direction of this company. Every major investment decision has been based on your analysis. Every new client presentation has featured your research. You've been doing the job without the title." Maya sank back into her chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was proposing. "The board will never approve it. Margaret Walsh alone would fight it tooth and nail. Margaret Walsh is being transferred to our Chicago office to head HR for the manufacturing division. The board will be making their decision based on performance metrics and strategic vision, not office politics. And you think they'll choose someone who looks like me over the traditional candidates they're probably considering?" Alexander's expression grew intense. "Maya, I think they'll choose the person most likely to increase shareholder value and ensure the company's long-term success. Based on objective criteria, that person is you." Maya walked to the window, looking out at the city she had grown to love during her time at Sterling Industries. The view that had once seemed impossibly distant now felt familiar and accessible. She thought about her journey from the discount store dress and practical shoes to her current position as a respected director earning more money than she had ever dreamed possible. "What would the timeline be?" she asked. "The board meets next month to make their final decision. If approved, the transition would happen over 6 months, giving you time to prepare for the additional responsibilities. And if I fail? If I prove that I really am just a diversity hire who was promoted beyond her capabilities?" Alexander joined her at the window. Maya, do you remember what I told you during your first week here? That I was tired of hiring resumes instead of people. Yes. You've proven that instinct was correct every single day since then. You've outperformed every expectation and exceeded every goal we've set. The question isn't whether you're capable of being CEO. You've already demonstrated that you are. The question is whether you're willing to take the risk. Over the following weeks, Maya prepared for what felt like the ultimate job interview. She developed comprehensive strategic plans for Sterling Industries' next 5 years, analyzing market trends and identifying growth opportunities across multiple sectors. She also spent considerable time working with an executive coach, learning about the leadership and communication skills necessary for a CEO role. The preparation was intensive, but Maya found herself energized by the challenge. She had always thrived when given difficult problems to solve, and running a major corporation was simply a larger, more complex version of the analytical work she had been doing all along. David Kim, who had become both a trusted colleague and close friend, helped her practice her presentation to the board. You need to walk into that room as if you already are the CEO, he advised. Not arrogant, but confident. They need to see you as the leader you've already become. Jennifer Torres provided insights into managing the political dynamics of board relationships. Remember, these are business people first. They care about results more than anything else. Lead with your track record, and let your achievements speak for themselves. Marcus Johnson offered perspective on handling the inevitable skepticism she would face. There will always be people who question whether you deserve to be where you are. The key is to let your work answer those questions rather than trying to defend yourself with words. Maya also spent time with her grandmother, who had been following her career progression with quiet pride and occasional concern about the pressures Maya was facing. Are you happy, Maya? Her grandmother asked during one of their regular phone calls. I am, Maya replied, surprised by how true that statement felt. I'm challenged and sometimes overwhelmed, but I wake up every morning excited about the work I'm doing. Then, you have already succeeded, regardless of what this board decides. Success is not about titles or money. It's about using your gifts to make a meaningful contribution. The board presentation took place on a crisp November morning in Sterling Industries' executive conference room. Maya arrived early, setting up her materials and reviewing her notes one final time. She had chosen her most professional outfit, a tailored navy suit she had finally been able to afford, paired with simple jewelry and low heels that would keep her comfortable during the long presentation. At 10 o'clock, 8 board members filed into the room, followed by Alexander. Maya recognized most of them from company publications and business journals, influential leaders from various industries who brought decades of experience to their oversight role. The board chairman, Charles Hamilton, was a distinguished man in his 60s who had built his own investment firm before joining Sterling Industries' board 5 years earlier. He called the meeting to order and gestured for Maya to begin. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to present my vision for Sterling Industries' future. Maya's voice was steady, reflecting the confidence she had developed through months of successful presentations and strategic decisions. She spent the next 90 minutes walking through her comprehensive analysis of the company's current position, market opportunities, and strategic recommendations. Her presentation covered everything from operational efficiency improvements to new market expansion possibilities, supported by detailed financial projections and competitive analysis. The board members asked challenging questions about risk management, regulatory compliance, competitive threats, and stakeholder relations. Maya answered each question thoughtfully, drawing on both her analytical experience and the broader business knowledge she had acquired during her rapid rise through the company. Ms. Chun, Charles Hamilton said during a brief pause in the questioning, you've presented an impressive strategic vision. However, some board members have expressed concern about your limited experience in senior leadership roles. How would you address those concerns? Maya had prepared for this question, knowing it would be central to the board's evaluation. Mr. Hamilton, I understand those concerns, and I think they're reasonable. Traditional executive experience is valuable, but it's not the only indicator of leadership potential. She clicked to a slide showing key metrics from her time as director. Over the past 6 months, I've managed a team of 12 people across multiple projects, maintained relationships with our largest clients, and made strategic decisions that have generated significant revenue growth. More importantly, I've done so while maintaining the highest standards of ethical conduct and risk management. Board member Sarah Chun, a former Fortune 500 CEO herself, leaned forward. Ms. Chun, what would you say to critics who might suggest that your rapid promotion represents a departure from merit-based advancement? I would invite them to examine my track record, Maya replied without hesitation. Every promotion I've received has been based on measurable performance improvements and successful project outcomes. I've never asked for special treatment, only for the opportunity to prove my capabilities through my work. The questioning continued for another 30 minutes before Charles Hamilton called for a break. Maya was escorted to a nearby office while the board deliberated, leaving her alone with her thoughts and growing anxiety about the outcome. Alexander found her there an hour later, his expression unreadable. Maya, the board has reached a decision. They walked back to the conference room together, where the board members had reassembled around the table. Charles Hamilton stood as they entered. Ms. Chun, the board has voted unanimously to offer you the position of Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Industries. We were impressed by your strategic vision, your track record of success, and your thoughtful responses to our questions about leadership and risk management. Maya felt the room spinning slightly as the magnitude of the moment hit her. She was going to be the CEO of a major corporation. After years of being overlooked and underestimated, she was being entrusted with one of the most significant leadership roles in the business world. Thank you, she managed to say. I'm honored by your confidence and excited about the opportunity to lead Sterling Industries into its next chapter of growth. The formal announcement of Maya's appointment was made 3 days later, generating significant media attention. Business journals praised Sterling Industries for its innovative approach to executive selection, while some critics questioned whether she was truly qualified for such a senior position. Maya largely ignored the external commentary, focusing instead on preparing for her new responsibilities. She spent the transition period working closely with Alexander to understand all aspects of the CEO role, from board relations to regulatory compliance to stakeholder communications. On her first official day as CEO, Maya arrived at Sterling Industries to find a small crowd of photographers and reporters waiting outside the building. The attention was overwhelming, but not unexpected. She had become a symbol of changing leadership dynamics in corporate America. Inside the building, Maya made her way to Alexander's former office, which would now be hers. The space felt both familiar and foreign, representing both how far she had come and how much responsibility she now carried. Her assistant, the same woman who had once dismissed her during her first interview, brought her coffee and the morning schedule. The irony was not lost on either of them, though both were professional enough to focus on the work rather than the awkward history. Maya's first major decision as CEO was to implement a company-wide mentorship program designed to identify and develop talent regardless of background or traditional credentials. She also established a scholarship fund for students from underprivileged backgrounds who showed academic excellence and leadership potential. I want Sterling Industries to become the kind of company that recognizes potential wherever it exists, Maya explained to her senior staff during their first strategy meeting. We're going to compete by being smarter, more innovative, and more inclusive than our competitors. The changes Maya implemented were not always popular. Some long-term employees resented the shift away from traditional hiring and promotion practices. A few senior managers left for other firms, claiming that standards were being lowered. But the results spoke for themselves. Sterling Industries' performance improved steadily under Maya's leadership, with both revenue and client satisfaction reaching record levels. The company attracted top talent from diverse backgrounds, creating a more dynamic and innovative culture. 1 year after becoming CEO, Maya was featured on the cover of Fortune magazine as CEO of the Year. The article detailed her remarkable rise from overlooked job applicant to successful corporate leader, highlighting both her business achievements and her efforts to create opportunities for others. Maya kept a copy of that magazine in her office, not as a symbol of personal success, but as a reminder of how far she had traveled and how many people had supported her journey. When young professionals visited her office, particularly those who looked like outsiders in the corporate world, she would point to the magazine and say, "Success isn't about where you start. It's about how willing you are to work for what you believe you can achieve." Maya's grandmother, now 80 years old but still sharp and engaged, visited the Sterling Industries offices for the first time during the company's annual celebration. As they toured the building together, Maya showed her the conference room where she had first been rejected, the office where she had worked those early nervous days, and, finally, the executive suite where she now led the entire organization. "You have built something beautiful here, Maya," her grandmother said as they stood in Maya's office looking out at the city below. "Not just for yourself, but for all the other young people who will follow in your footsteps." Maya thought about all the people who had underestimated her along the way. The interviewers who dismissed her based on her appearance, the colleagues who questioned her qualifications, the critics who suggested her success was unearned. None of that mattered now. What mattered was the work she was doing, the people she was helping, and the example she was setting for others who dared to dream beyond their circumstances. Alexander Sterling, now successfully established in his role at Sterling Holdings, visited occasionally to check on the company's progress. During one such visit, he and Maya stood in the same conference room where she had first impressed Harrison Global with her analysis. "Do you ever regret taking the risk on someone like me?" Maya asked him. Alexander smiled. "Maya, the only risk would have been not recognizing your potential when I had the chance. You've exceeded every expectation and proven that the best leaders come from the most unexpected places." As the sun set over the city that had become her professional home, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had started as someone who was ridiculed for her simple appearance 10 times over. Some people don't see it that way. Alexander gathered his materials, his expression thoughtful. "Maya, there will always be people who question your success because it challenges their assumptions about who deserves to succeed. Your job is to continue proving them wrong, one excellent decision at a time. And if I fail, then you fail. But failure is always a possibility, regardless of your background or education. The only guarantee is that you'll never succeed if you don't try." That evening, Maya called her grandmother to share the news of her promotion. Her grandmother listened with quiet pride, asking thoughtful questions about her new responsibilities and the challenges she would face. "I'm proud of you, Maya," her grandmother said. "But remember, success is not about reaching the top. It's about lifting others as you climb." Maya thought about those words as she prepared for the challenges ahead. She was no longer just proving herself. She was now responsible for building and leading a team. The stakes were higher, but so were the opportunities to make a lasting impact. Tomorrow would bring new responsibilities, new pressures, and undoubtedly new skeptics who questioned her qualifications. But tonight, Maya allowed herself to feel proud of how far she had come and excited about where she might go next. As she finally packed up her things, Maya reflected on her first day. The work itself had been engaging and challenging in exactly the way she had hoped. Alexander's confidence in her abilities was both encouraging and intimidating. The social dynamics of the office would clearly be more difficult to navigate than she had anticipated, but David Kim's presence proved that she wasn't the only outsider who had managed to find a place here. Walking through the empty corridors toward the elevator, Maya passed several executive offices that were still lit, their occupants working late into the evening. She wondered if they had started their careers feeling as uncertain and out of place as she did, or if they had always moved through this world with confidence and belonging. The security guard nodded to her as she signed out for the evening. "Working late on your first day? That's impressive. I wanted to get a good start on my projects." Smart approach. The people who last around here are usually the ones who put in the extra effort. He held the door open for her. "Have a good evening, Miss Chun." Outside, the October air was crisp and energizing. Maya walked toward the bus stop, her mind still processing the events of the day. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove herself, and probably new reminders of how different she was from everyone else in that gleaming building. But tonight, as she rode the bus home to her small apartment, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the excitement of work that truly challenged her abilities, and the hope that she might finally have found a place where her skills mattered more than her appearance. It was just one day, but it was a beginning. T lay ahead. Starting Monday, she would be working alongside people who had every advantage she lacked. She would be representing not just herself, but also everyone who had ever been dismissed because of their appearance or background. The pressure was enormous, but so was the potential. That evening, Maya called her grandmother to share the news. Her grandmother, now 78 and living in a small retirement community, listened with quiet pride as Maya described her new position. "I always knew you were destined for something special," her grandmother said. "But remember, Maya, success is not about proving you're better than others. It's about proving you're the best version of yourself." Maya spent the weekend researching Sterling Industries more thoroughly, reading every article and financial report she could find. She wanted to understand not just the company's current position, but also its history, its culture, and its challenges. If she was going to succeed in this role, she needed to be prepared for anything. She also went shopping for professional clothes, using money from her small savings account to buy 2 new blouses and a blazer that actually fit properly. It wasn't a complete wardrobe makeover, but it was a start. Maya had always believed that substance mattered more than style, but she was beginning to understand that in her new world, she would need both. Monday morning couldn't come soon enough. Maya was ready to begin the next chapter of her life, whatever challenges it might bring. Maya also stood in front of her small closet, examining her limited options for interview attire. She had 2 other dresses suitable for professional settings, both equally plain and inexpensive. Her one blazer had a small stain near the hem that she had never been able to remove completely. She sighed, knowing that her appearance would likely be scrutinized even more carefully the second time around. But as she prepared for bed, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in months: hope. Someone at Sterling Industries had seen something in her application that merited a second look. Maybe, just maybe, her grandmother's words about substance mattering more than surface would prove true. She fell asleep that night with her interview outfit laid out carefully on her dresser chair, her portfolio updated with additional samples of her work, and her mind running through potential questions and answers. Tomorrow would bring another chance to prove that sometimes the most valuable things came in the most unexpected packages. Maya didn't know that 3 floors above the conference room where she had been interviewed, Alexander Sterling had been reviewing personnel files late into the evening. Nor did she know that her academic transcripts and carefully crafted cover letter had caught the attention of a man who was tired of hiring people who looked perfect but performed poorly. What she didn't know was that she had been given an opportunity that few people in her position received, a second chance. And she was determined not to waste it.